let's start. So, welcome everybody to our club, um, my life, my business, and our event. Wish I was here, which speaks to living an engaged life, whether it's in business, whether it's in your career, or generally loving every single moment of the journey that you're on. Some people call it the game of life. Um, This is November 2022, and every year, and if you a foreigner in South Africa, we have 16 days of activism, and this campaign normally starts around about the 25th of November until the 10th of December. And what it's all about is, or its objective really, is creating awareness around ending the cycle of violence against women, children, and people with disabilities. So I looked it up for this year, and the theme of the 2022 campaign is socioeconomic rights and empowerment to build women's resilience against gender based violence and femicide. And it's got a tagline: connect, collaborate, and contract. And I just thought to myself that Shanaz brought up such an important topic last week concerning women, in particular women of color. In South Africa, we've got a technical definition that when we speak about black women, we speak about coloreds, Indians, African women. And so interchangeably, I'd like to just use that term from that perspective. So, but coming back to the thrust of the conversation, it is really about paying homage to this aspect of women's rights in the workplace as well. And the theme is about socioeconomic rights and empowerment. But coming back to something you said, Shanaz, is that um, black leadership, black woman leadership, is more than just leadership. And I may be paraphrasing, but you said it involves social injustice. So I think this topic is so relevant for November. And so, how do we end this cycle of social injustice to black women leaders? Um, and a couple of things I just want to highlight. The things that stuck in my memory is Shanaz. You also said black women in leadership need to understand that gender plays a role even when you don't want it to. It's very key. Um, and some questions, and I think guess this is really the first question. And Shanaz, you did touch on quite a bit of this, but I'm just wondering if we actually unpack it a little bit as we move forward with our podcast this afternoon. And really, I mean, the answer should be obvious, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is why do black women in leadership have to work so much harder than men? And the follow-up question to that is, what are the paradigms that exist that creates this type of work climate?
Yeah, thank you, Jacques. I think that the reason why women, black women around the globe really have to work so much harder is that there are myths out there about women, and that there are myths about black women. And some of the research and the authors that whose work I use, they talk about, you can call it double colonization or double oppression, where
Mhm.
where women, black women, we don't only experience the oppression of patriarchy, so in terms of a male dominated society that privileges men, but we also live in a society where we are oppressed because of our color. We live in a society where white privilege still exists. And so whether it's our gender or our race, that's what we experience. And there are certain invisible privileges that men have. And I'll give you an example. So I mean, it's a little thing, but it's this is how how our society was created for men. Like even the things that we use. So I graduated. So you have those. I mean, a long time ago now. You have those graduation gowns, and they were not meant for you to wear these certain gadgets that you actually can't wear a dress under. So you've got to like, or so the attire, even like little things like attire where you can't, where you can't attach a blouse. You've got to wear a blouse with certain things. So even like minor little things like that was in they created it for the man, for a male. And so that is why I often say that male privilege often in our society is invisible. And it's, for example, they will assume, if they hear Dr. Hussein, then I sometimes get emails thinking I'm a male. They respond and because they just assume that the qualification possibly means firstly a medical doctor, and then secondly that medical doctor must be male. So and it's happened, so yeah, so those are just some examples. So automatically there are assumptions about what we can and can't do as women.
Wow. So, would there be, is it like a written standard that a woman has to try and achieve as opposed to a man, for instance? Is it like a, because it's like a global, you made the
Yes,
point. This is
yes,
global, so it's
yeah,
like an unwritten code.
yeah.
What would that standard then be? Does it just have to be a little bit better, or how does it work?
I think that I don't I think that for women in leadership, it's this idea that I don't only have to be, I don't only have to do my job. I have to do better in order to be accepted. That my ideas and the way I think and my contribution is going to be viewed as equal, because in some corporate culture, as well as in business culture, as well as in our society, the idea is that a woman who is confident and speaks out and challenges, or any woman that represents or has male traits. So male traits are automatically, leadership, sorry, is automatically assumed to be associated with male traits, with a man, with masculinity, not femininity, not being female. If you're a female, for men to accept your advice and your contribution and what you say, because being, and now so now we come to talk, what are the characteristics of a leader, and
Mhm.
some of those things, unfortunately, in our society is not associated with being female, or being, yeah, with being a woman. And that is why, so I automatically say, look at the fact of the tennis association globally, even, I think, I mean, it was still very recently that Serena Williams had to fight, and that the women had to fight to get equal pay than what the male tennis players get. So this is not only a South African phenomena, this is a global phenomena. Even in Europe, women still earn less than men.
So economically, how
Yes,
does that
that's
even
for
make
sure.
sense? You know, so the woman has to work much harder than a man for lower pay, whereas the natural assumption is that a man is generally better, and we speak obviously about leadership. Um, but I had a thought while you were talking, is that not all males make good managers or great leaders. It doesn't necessarily follow that just because you're a man, you are automatically a good leader. And I wonder to myself, is it so if that was the only context, then just by virtue of your biological birth, you are then destined to be a leader. And the fact of the matter is it's not true. So it sounds to me like it's just relative to a woman. Therefore, if you have to compare male and female, and obviously we're just generalizing and so forth, but there are exceptions to this particular rule. But it just means, relatively speaking, if you have to choose or between a male candidate for leadership or female candidate for leadership, especially a black woman candidate, the automatic or the impulsive choice, the default choice seems to lean heavily towards a man just by virtue of his biological birth, which makes no sense. There must be lots of research around this that provides some empirical evidence of some sort in terms of why that is. I mean, if staying on the male side a little bit, even within the male species, people automatically assume that somebody who is tall and taller than most is automatically a better leader than other males of average height. So I think society breeds these criteria and promotes misperceptions around these kinds of things because in the end, I do believe that everybody's capable of leadership, right? Whether it's by default or by choice. But the issue is the judgment from external from an external point of view. And so um, society breeds us a certain way. And interestingly enough, when you think about the Bible and how it is constructed, and even when you think about the genealogy of Jesus, there are so many women represented in that genealogy, which is quite interesting. So from a completely spiritual point of view, women play a major role. I think about Deborah, for example, one of the judges of Israel, distinguished herself incredibly in so many different ways. And so you have all kinds of heroes all through even the Bible. But the tendency, and I want to speak as a male because I want to, if you are a male listening to this podcast, I want to challenge you. And I'm talking particularly to the generation X's and above. I think millennials, GZs, and so forth are a little bit, and once again, it's just my impression, but I think they're a little bit more open minded. I think it's the older men, my sort of generation, and older baby boomer type generations that have come through a society that has taught us this. And I wanna challenge you, whatever age you are then, and maybe that is a paradigm in itself. But if you are 40 and older, is in this month you listening to this podcast, is just stop and reflect that somehow or the other, whether you've done it consciously or unconsciously, have you judged um, a black woman in a leadership role as less than, sort of subliminally rated a lot lower? If you're the person making decisions around on remuneration and advancement, did you instinctively think that the male peers, were particularly better? And you didn't even consciously see that bias. And here's probably the word is we have such an unconscious bias in many instances where this is concerned, which I think makes the social injustice, or whether it's even in the corporate injustice, so much worse, I think. Um, and so I hope this podcast brings us to this point where we start to want to make a change, in the type of areas that we are responsible in, and there's true equity. I heard a quote the other day about um, equality and equity. Now, the difference is equality is where everybody is treated exactly the same. And whereas equity is where you treat people in terms of what it is they need for them to advance or for them to achieve success the way they define it. And I like that distinction. So I think it would come down to the same thing where we're talking about people in leadership, right? Eventually. But we have to address the fact that women of color the world over, black women specifically in South Africa, have this great disadvantage. And Shanaz, I was just wondering whether broad-based black economic empowerment actually created a conducive environment for black women to thrive in the corporate environment at all. Whether it actually, because you see women advance, you see women being appointed, but it does not speak to the other comment that you made, that women are highly visible and yet invisible. What do you think about how BE either helped or hamstrung women in the workplace, women in leadership in the workplace?
I don't think that they've done enough. I think that it's been piecemeal or tokenistic, because you see what you're talking about is about um um uh, how we've internalized these values, and they always talk about they call it hegemonic masculinity. So, and it's about developing our organization's environment to not experience and have this atmosphere of hegemonic masculinity. So, hegemonic masculinity is all about those traditional stereotypes. The man has to be in charge. He's the breadwinner. He's got to be macho. He's got to be aggressive. He's got to know all the answers and all of that. So the first thing, and so I've recently been just finished an article, and there were some guys who authors who were talking about a multiplicity of masculinity that we mustn't just assume, and that really means that can we perceive of ourselves then, I guess, as men having different types of masculinities, and being fluid in that way, where we are not so strictly held down. Because you know what, in the end, when not only are women oppressed by these internalized values of masculinity, but men themselves cannot live up to those that values. And so that is why it doesn't set up the women effectively, because of what you said about what is equity and what is equality. So some environments loan itself, they want women to be equal, but it's not just about women being equal. It's about how is your whole company being set up to advance women, or actually unintentionally discriminate and disadvantage women. Do you know how insecure women are when they have children? Are they going to have a job when they come back? Is it going to look like I am being trying to be a woman and a corporate manager, and yet and the idea that, oh, she's probably going to have childcare issues now. Those issues are still relevant in the boardroom of top companies today. And so that, in a sense, doesn't set women up, because the system has been created for men. And it's about, can we transform a system where women do not have to justify coming late because of childcare, you know? And yeah, so I think that the system has been set up, and we need to change the system and rethink, like you said, equity. So I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Oh, it does. I'm gonna have to look up some of the words and study them a bit. Some of the phrases you were using
Sorry,
there.
man.
No,
Sorry,
it was
hegemonic masculinity is that. I'm the breadwinner, I'm the leader. As a male, I need to be in charge, I need to be aggressive, I need to have all the answers. Whereas multiple masculinity just means that you don't think that way, that you are open. You spoke about men being open, that I can be vulnerable, that I can see that actually there are other things that I need, that I can engage in household tasks. I don't have to lead all the time. I don't have to be the breadwinner all the time. I will feel okay if she earns more than me.
Mm.
So
What? Yes. No. I tell you what. This is fascinating stuff, and I mean, it's such a deep topic. And so the way I am wired is I think we need to be educated to take action, not educated just to know things, but really to apply what we learn. Listen, it's still fascinating, and I do believe that generationally, I'm not even sure if my assumption is correct, but generationally, then the multiplicity masculinity must be beginning to rear its head a little bit more naturally, or is that just the misperception I have, or the multiple masculinity? I think that's the
yeah,
term, right?
yeah. No, I think that you are right. It's definitely emerging, and I think you know what, and I think the older generation, they are men. So I'm not saying that all of every man is like that, but I'm saying that they are older generation men who do have different types of masculinity, that they don't only engage, like I say, with the dominant type. But I think that it's challenging for them, and it's not become wide enough.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that is it. It's the here and there. So I think that it's about them, maybe men also engaging in this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question leading onto this is, there's obviously the environment, and the architects of the type of environment, whether it's consciously, unconsciously, leading in this way, perpetrating or continuing with the stereotype. But there is something you also said um, last week, in terms of and you were encouraging a black woman leader to embrace who she is, because you said, because when you do, you add value. You it's that difference that adds value. And so you know I think you also said she needs to accept who she is, um, while being who she is. And I think just that whole aspect of it requires, I suppose, a conversation on its own. So, and maybe I'm just asking if this is something that you want to look at, because I ask, there's what society does or doesn't do, but what lies within the control of a woman, and a woman of color in particular, is self acceptance, right? So I asked this question once. I was delivering a program to about 20 odd women, business coaching program. And I asked this question. And so the jury is still out, because I had, like, out of the 20, half said one and the other half said the other. Two questions asked: does a woman feel beautiful because she looks beautiful? Or does she look beautiful because she feels beautiful? And so two schools of thought immediately into that place. But when we are talking about self acceptance leading to the confidence of knowing that you are going to add value as a leader, I mean, inspire, motivate a team to achieve goals. Um, this is what we're talking about, and having that confidence and knowing that you don't have to prove yourself just because you're working in a male dominated space in particular. So it comes back to that self acceptance. Do I feel confident and therefore I am confident? And so my question therefore would be, we can address this somehow, Shanaz, is how does a woman embrace herself? A black woman in leadership in particular, embrace all that she is, and celebrates the fact that she is who she is, made in a certain way, and having the confidence to know that she can perform, to expectation, beyond expectation even. And so core to all of this must then be addressing an inner belief leading to inner convictions and being confident, you know. So yeah, I was wondering, do you think it's worthwhile, we I don't know if there's a lot to say in this particular area, but I would really love to know what practical things women can do. And I think, we using black women because it's the 16 days of activism that's going to come forward. But I mean, anybody listening to this, is we all have to deal with things in different ways. But in particular, black women in leadership, how do they fully embrace all that they are, loving who they are, and therefore being who they are?
Are you asking me that question, or are you? I wasn't sure.
Well, I'm positioning the question for you in such a way that if you
Yeah,
can kind of give it a crack, and
yeah,
let's discuss it next week, and see how
yeah,
we go from there, and maybe carry this theme for November. I mean, to me, that's my little bit I can do, and
yeah.
and you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely do it. I was thinking about something similar, and it will, so for next week what I'll prepare is I start to connect that with it's an organizational, psychoanalytic organizational term. They talk about authority. So do
Hmm.
I, and they say that when you have authority from above,
Yeah.
authority within, and authority below, then you're able to move and act better in your position as a leader. And so
Wow.
that authority within connects very much with self-acceptance. So I'll talk about those three types of authorities in a sense next week then. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful! Can't wait. Thank you,
Okay.
Shanaz.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Julia, for being here. And well, if you're listening to the playback or the podcast, I hope that we've inspired you to begin to make a difference. So, bye for now. Until next week.